Human history is full of inventions that reshaped the course of civilization, but few carried the same blend of magic, elegance, and sheer endurance as Chinese porcelain. Europeans called it white gold, and for centuries, the secret of how to make it remained one of the most jealously guarded technological secrets in the world. To the ancient Chinese, porcelain was never simply a material for dishware or household objects. It embodied an entire philosophy: harmony, purity, and a relentless pursuit of perfection. This is the story of Chinese porcelain across the centuries, how its technology evolved, what secrets lay behind its formulas, and how a fragile handful of clay came to conquer the entire world. Origins: from rough pottery to the first proto-porcelain. The road to true porcelain was long and difficult, stretching across thousands of years. The earliest steps date back to the Neolithic period, when ancient potters first learned to fire clay into something durable. The real breakthrough, though, came during the Shang and Zhou dynasties, with the emergence of high-fired glazed stoneware. During the Han dynasty, roughly from 206 BCE to 220 CE, potters produced what is now known as proto-porcelain, or qingxi, an early form of celadon. These wares had a denser body than earlier pottery and were coated in a pale greenish glaze colored by iron oxide. By the Three Kingdoms period and into the Tang dynasty, spanning 618 to 907 CE, ceramic production had become genuinely systematic. Tang-era porcelain grew stronger and thinner, and pieces began to produce a clear, ringing tone when struck, a telltale sign of proper, high-quality vitrification. This was also the era of the famous three-color Sankai glazes, used both for everyday objects and for the funerary figurines known as mingqi. It was during the Tang dynasty, too, that Chinese porcelain first began traveling in real volume along the Silk Road and by sea, reaching the Middle East and Southeast Asia. The Golden Age, the Song, Yuan, and Ming dynasties. The true Golden Age of Chinese porcelain unfolded across the Song, Yuan, and Ming dynasties, each bringing its own distinct style, form, and technical breakthrough to the art of ceramics. The Song era, running from 960 to 1279, is often described as the classical age of Chinese aesthetics. Song potters had little interest in ornamentation for its own sake. Their ambition was purity of color, refinement of texture, and surfaces that echoed the quiet beauty of natural minerals and jade. 5 kilns from this period are remembered above all others as the greatest in Chinese history. The Ru kiln produced a famously delicate sky blue glaze, laced with a fine web of hairline crackle that resembled spider silk, and its surviving pieces are so rare today that they rank among the most valuable objects any museum or private collector can own. The Guan kiln served as the official imperial workshop, known for its noble, dark crackle lines running across a pale ground. The Jun kiln became celebrated for matte glazes that shifted spontaneously from blue into purple and violet across a single surface, an effect potters could influence but never fully control. The Gu kiln specialized in a controlled, double-layered crackle pattern. And the Ding kiln produced an elegant white porcelain, often finished with carved or stamped relief decoration. Under the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty, from 1271 to 1368, the center of porcelain production shifted decisively to the town of Jingdezhen, which would go on to become the undisputed porcelain capital of the world for the rest of Chinese history. It was here, during the Yuan period, that the celebrated blue and white porcelain, known as Qinghua, was born. Potters began painting directly onto the unglazed white body using cobalt pigment imported from Persia, sometimes referred to as Soleimani cobalt. The cobalt design was applied just before glazing, and the finished piece was then fired at extremely high temperatures, somewhere around 1300 degrees Celsius. The resulting combination, a snow-white ground paired with a deep, saturated cobalt blue design, triggered a genuine revolution in decorative art that would eventually influence ceramic traditions across the entire world. Under the Ming dynasty, from 1368 to 1644, porcelain production reached its full technical maturity. Jingdezhen grew into a genuinely industrial complex, organized around an extraordinary division of labor. A single vase might pass through the hands of as many as 70 different specialized craftsmen before it was finished. This era saw the rise of polychrome painting techniques, including dotsai, or contrasting colors, and wutsai, or 5 colors, in which an underglaze blue design was completed with overglaze enamels in red, green, yellow, and turquoise. Porcelain destined for the imperial court was held to brutally strict quality control. The slightest visible flaw could mean an entire batch was destroyed rather than risk anything imperfect reaching the emperor's table. The Qing Empire, the flowering of enamels and the export boom. The Qing dynasty, founded by the Manchus in 1644 and lasting until 1911, carried porcelain traditions forward and pushed the art of enamel work to an almost unimaginable degree of refinement. Under the reigns of the emperors Kangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong, Chinese potters mastered extraordinarily complex overglaze painting techniques, giving rise to 2 celebrated new color families. Famille Verte, the green family, was dominated by rich greens and botanical tones, accented with touches of blue, red, and yellow. Famille Rose, the pink family, emerged after European missionaries introduced a pink enamel based on colloidal gold, a technique that let Chinese painters achieve remarkably soft, lifelike floral and figural compositions unlike anything produced before. Qing masters also experimented extensively with rare monochrome glazes, producing deep single-color finishes known poetically as sacrificial red, or oxblood, tea dust, mirror black, and glazes prized for their flambe, or transmuted, copper effects, where the color shifted unpredictably during firing. Across the 17th and 18th centuries, European monarchs and aristocrats fell into what can only be described as porcelain fever. Owning genuine Chinese vases and dinner services became a mark of the very highest social status and wealth. European rulers sometimes traded entire regiments of soldiers for porcelain collections, most famously, King Frederick William I of Prussia, who exchanged 600 of his elite dragoon soldiers with Augustus the Strong, Elector of Saxony, in return for a collection of Chinese vases, a set still known today as the dragoon vases. Europe's own attempts to crack the secret of white gold eventually led to the discovery of true hard-paste porcelain at Meissen, in Saxony, in 1709, credited to the alchemist Johann Friedrich Böttger. Even after that breakthrough, European workshops continued imitating Chinese forms and decorative styles for generations, chasing an aesthetic they had only just learned to physically reproduce. The anatomy of the miracle, the secrets of production technology. Why was genuine Chinese porcelain prized, for centuries, above gold itself? The answer lies in a precise combination of natural raw materials and an exacting production process refined over hundreds of years. Classical Chinese porcelain relies on 2 essential minerals. Kaolin, a fine white clay, gives the raw material its plasticity during shaping and, after firing, forms the skeletal structure of the finished piece. The quality responsible for its whiteness, its heat resistance, and its opacity. The mineral takes its name directly from Jialing, the hill near Jingdezhen where it was originally mined. The second material, patunsa, sometimes called porcelain stone, is a finely ground feldspar or mica-rich rock. Under firing, it melts into a glassy phase that binds the kaolin particles together, producing a body that is dense, watertight, and capable of ringing like a bell when struck. Turning these raw materials into finished porcelain demanded a genuinely sophisticated understanding of physics and chemistry, refined over centuries of trial and error. Clay and stone were aged for years before use. Sometimes, workshops prepared raw material that would not actually be used until a full generation later, quite literally material set aside by grandfathers for their grandchildren to work with, and then washed and ground down into an extraordinarily fine powder. Shaping was done on the potter's wheel or in specialized molds, and finished pieces were coated in a liquid glaze that fused with the body during firing to form a single, seamless, glass-like surface. The final firing took place in kilns known as longyao, or dragon kilns, long tunnel-shaped structures built directly into hillsides so that their natural slope would create a powerful, self-sustaining draft as they burned. Fired with pine wood, these kilns reached internal temperatures of roughly 1300 to 1350 degrees Celsius, precisely the temperature at which kaolin and patunsa fused together into the extraordinarily strong, translucent material the world came to prize. Philosophy and symbolism in Chinese porcelain decoration. Chinese porcelain functions almost like an encoded book, layered with meaning, allegory, and wishes for happiness, longevity, and prosperity. Nothing painted onto a piece of imperial porcelain was ever chosen at random, every motif carried a specific, deliberate significance. The dragon and the phoenix stood as symbols of imperial authority, of harmony between yin and yang, and of the highest possible state of well-being, the dragon representing wisdom, power, and the rain that brought a good harvest, the phoenix representing rebirth and beauty. A recurring set of 4 plants, known as the 4 noble ones, carried its own layered symbolism. The plum blossom, blooming defiantly in the depths of winter, stood for resilience and the ability to overcome hardship. The orchid represented purity, modesty, and refinement. Bamboo symbolized flexibility, strength of character, and long life, and the chrysanthemum evoked solitude, longevity, and the autumn of a well-lived life. Fish and lotus flowers carried their own coded wish for abundance, since the Chinese word for fish is a near homophone for the word meaning surplus or abundance, while the lotus was closely associated with spiritual purity. And the 8 immortals of Taoist tradition were often represented not as full figures but through their individual attributes alone: a fan, a sword, a flute, a gourd, a flower basket, castanets, a lotus, and a fisherman's drum. Each object standing in as a symbol meant to ward off evil and draw good fortune toward its owner. A record-breaking legacy. The value the world still places on this tradition became unmistakable in 2014, when a small Ming Dynasty wine cup, known as the Chicken Cup for its painted design of a rooster and hens, sold at auction in Hong Kong for over $36 million. A piece scarcely larger than a modern espresso cup, made during the Tsinghua reign of the 15th century, whose delicate Dotsai enamel work had once been so difficult to reproduce that later Qing dynasty potters, generations afterward, still struggled to match it. Shipwrecks recovered from the seabed off the coast of Southeast Asia, laden with tens of thousands of intact porcelain pieces bound for foreign markets centuries ago, have only reinforced how vast and how valuable this maritime trade in white gold truly was, carrying Chinese porcelain to buyers scattered across half the known world. Conclusion: an eternal legacy. Chinese porcelain traveled a long road, from the rough pottery of the Neolithic period to the refined masterpieces produced in imperial kilns and, today, in the studios of contemporary master artisans. It became something close to a universal artistic language, one that bridged East and West, science and aesthetics, craft and deep philosophical thought. Today, antique pieces from the Ming and Qing dynasties fill the galleries of the world's greatest museums, from the Palace Museum in Beijing to the Louvre and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, regularly commanding extraordinary prices at international auction. But the true legacy of Chinese porcelain lies elsewhere, in the simple reminder that human labor, joined with patience, fire, and ordinary clay pulled from the earth, can produce objects that outlast time itself. Fragile as it appears, porcelain has proven sturdier than empires, carrying the clear light and beauty of human craftsmanship across the centuries, unbroken.